Okay, so welcome to a new guide on this channel, and on this occasion is the analog synth. This is not a review, but a deep dive guide about this device. Now, everything is in tiny chapters, so if you look at the description or the timeline, you can jump to a section or skip the ones you don't want. So if you like what I do, remember to like and subscribe, and if you want to buy me a coffee just to say thanks, check the links at the description. So how this works is that we have two oscillators. The oscillators will go to the filters and then go to the amp section and then go out. So it makes sense that we start from the oscillators. I'm always going to be starting from a default patch, and I'm going to go to the amp, and right here you have something that says envelope velocity. We will talk about this, but for now, since I'm talking and using the mouse and playing a keyboard at the same time, I'm going to disable this so I don't have to be aware of how hard or how soft I play my keyboard. Okay, so let's start with the oscillators. So you get two oscillators pretty much, and when you start with a default patch, both oscillators are going to be on. So it says right here 1 and 2, and if you click them, you're going to be turning them off. So whenever I play something, nothing happens. So you can just use the oscillator number 1 without using the oscillator number 2, or if you want to use both, you can just turn them on. So in this case, I'm just going to work with the oscillator number 1 because the 2 is pretty much the same. So the oscillator number one, you can go down in volume or go up in volume, pretty obvious. And then you have all these controls that you have right here. Right here, you can select the shape, which by default, it's going to be a saw. But you have other waveforms like a sine wave, and you have a square. And then you have right here, which is going to be noise. Alright, so you have the most common waveforms that you could get on any analog synthesizer. In the right side, you can control the octave control, so it means that you can go down an octave or go up. On the other side, you can go in semitones, and I'm covering the obvious parts so we can go to the most complicated parts. You just go up and down in semitones, that's all. And then you have your detune. So if you can go in semitones, instead of going in semitones, you can go in tiny little portions. In this case, it's going to be cents. Right, so you can fine-tune whatever it is that you're playing. Now, all of this is just pretty obvious, and I'm pretty sure you knew about this. But then at the bottom, you have something called F1 and F2, and then it says F1, and we have an arrow. It's just a little bit confusing. So this is something that you don't get on all synthesizers. So the oscillators will go to the filters or both filters, and you have different combinations. That's the thing. Now, in this case, this one, it's saying F1 or F2, and it's because the oscillator number 1 and the 2 as well can route the signal that it's going to spit or output to the filter 1 or the filter 2, right? But right here, by default, this one is going to go to the filter 1, which is going to be this one. But what you can do right here, you can offset all of this. You can just maybe play something and say, I want to go to the filter number 1. No, I want to go to the number 2. So now the oscillator number 2 is going to go to the filter number 2. The oscillator number 1 is going to the filter number 2. Since this one is disabled, of course, we are not going to get anything. Now, also what you can do, you can split the signal. So right now, let's say that we want to send maybe 55% to the 1, and the remaining part is going to be sent to the number 2, right? And you get all of this, you have this, because you can create different combinations with this. If I bring the default patch, you know what we get by default when we throw the analog on the channel, is that the oscillator number 2 is going to this one, and it says filter 1. I'm sorry, the oscillator number 1 is going to filter 1 completely, and then the oscillator number 2, instead of going to the filter number 2, is still going to the number 1. So both oscillators route to the number 1, and then the number 1 is going to go out to the amp. And this is what we get, the final sound that we get. But still, what you can do, you can change this, how it works. You can change the configuration. And you have something called, at the end, when you go to the volume right here, quick routing. And this is telling you how this should be routed, and that's why it's called quick routing. If I click this right here, it's going to change the routing. Now, oscillator number 1 is going to go to the 2, to the filter number 1, and then go out. But then the oscillator number 2 will go to the filter number 2 without going to the 1, and this one is going to go out to its own amp. So we have like two different oscillators or two different synths of one oscillator going out from the same device. And you have different combinations. We are going to be talking about this. By default, when I we throw an instance, you know, the default, what we get right here, both oscillators will go to the filter number 1. Filter number 1 is going to go out on the amp number 1, and then we get some sound. And then it says right here, this is the confusing part, it says to filter 2 to F2. And you might assume that this is sending something to filter number 2. And it is, but since this is disabled and it has, it's not going through the amp, this is pretty much not doing anything unless you turn this on and you turn this on. But for now, we're gonna keep it simple. And we're gonna go back and keep talking about the oscillators because we have all of these options and we need to discuss them. Okay, so I'm gonna turn off the oscillator number 2 and maybe go up a little bit in volume. So when I play something, we get our waveform and everything is cool, sounds fine. Now, if I go right there, you have these options at the bottom. So the first one is the sub and the sync. So this one can give you a sub oscillator or a sync mode. We can go into sync. Now first, by default, it's sub. So on some analog synthesizers, what you get is a way like a Juno or Jupiter, for example. You can add or you have an extra oscillator, which is going to be played an octave below of whatever it is that you're doing right here. And this is what does. It's going to grab whatever shape that you're doing. If you're playing on this octave, it's going to add behind the scenes, you don't see it, the same wave shape, an octave lower. So if I play something, right now we are using this shape, which is a saw. And if I keep going up, notice that right here is just starting to change, but we also get more bottom end. So yeah, what it's doing, it's adding a sub oscillator. And if I go all the way up, it's just, we're gonna get a lot of the sub and less from this one. It's kind of taking over. If I go down, one oscillator. If I go up, we get that sub. And notice that everything is a saw. So if I change this to a square, everything is going to be square, right? No sub, more sub. Now, if you go to a sine wave and I go right there and go to this one, this one goes off. Why it's going off? Now, you can still do a sub. Notice that we are getting it. What you don't get is the sync. That's why it's just disabled and it's just giving you, dude, you can do only a sub. But if you go up on this one, you can hear and you can actually see right there, I'm maybe zooming too much, that is changing the waveform because we are adding a sub. So I'm going to go back to a saw, right? And just we are doing nothing of the sub. Now what we need to do, we need to talk about the other mode, which is going to be the sync. Now, sync is a very old school, I wouldn't say old school, it's just an old thing that we get on a lot of analog synthesizers. And it's just called sync or hard sync, or depends on how the synthesizer syncs. So pretty much what it does is on other synthesizers, is going to take a different oscillator, maybe this one, let's just pretend it's this one, and it's going to sync it to the frequency of this one. So by definition, what it's called, or how we call it, is that the oscillator number 1 is going to be the master. And since this one is synced to the number 2, the frequency of this one will restart along with the number 2. So when we detune, this one is going to detune along with this one. So if we are using the same oscillator and the same octave, the same semitones, you're not going to get a cool sound. But as soon as you start detuning the slave, you're going to start to get this metallic cool sounds. How it works right here is a little bit different from other synthesizers. By default, we always sync another oscillator to maybe the 1, or the 1, it's going to be synced to the 2, and so on. On this one, you don't get that. It works like this sub. Let me go to this. It works like this sub. We have some oscillator behind the scenes doing that sync. So if I go to sync and I just play something, it doesn't matter, whatever, and I go up in ratio, we are going to start to hear the difference. Because remember what I've told you, whenever we start to offset the sound, it's going to give us this metallic cool sound. Right now we have this 0, which is, they're pretty much on the same spot. But if I keep going up, we start to separate them. And we get that sound. If I do something like this, I could use it like this. And if I play something, let me just bring the keyboard. It sounds cool, but it maybe it doesn't sound that cool. Now, all of this, the sync really shines when we start to detune some of the oscillators. So in this case, I'm going to be playing maybe just a lower key. I'm going to be playing that. But when we modulate the pitch of this one, it's going to start to separate from whatever we have right here. So we will start to get that hard sync vibe. Notice that we get it there. It's just a little, maybe a little bit too hard. I'm going to maybe go down on the ratio. I'm going to change the octave, maybe 1 octave. And we get that hard sync sound just a little bit. Right? So that's the sync sound. Now, making it a little bit obvious, we can go down on the pitch or even make it shorter, and it's just going to be maybe a little bit more usable. So yeah, the sync is cool, but it really shines when you start modulating the pitch. And guess what? This is the next topic, this one. Okay, so we have a pitch envelope modulation. Now, we could have something like this, which is an ADSR type of envelope, but we don't get something like this. What you get is an initial, which is going to be where it's going to be starting up in pitch, and then it's going to take some time, and the pitch is going to go down, it's going to go right there, and then just go out. That's how it works. We are pretty much, it's like we start an initial pitch, and then we go back to whatever we are playing on the keyboard. So if I play a C note, it starts very high in pitch, and then it's going to take some time, and it's going to stay right there at whatever key I'm playing, which is a C3 in this case. Right? Now, of course, I'm going really up 100%, so it's going to start really high in pitch. Now, instead of doing this, you can start maybe right there, and it's going to be a little bit different. We can do just a little bit. And now, as you can hear, when I start up, it's going to start really up in pitch, right? It starts high. But instead of doing that, we can go low and start low in pitch, and then, go up in pitch. So this is the initial pitch envelope initial. And right here, this value is a representation of how, if we are going up or we are starting down, right? Now then, we need to decide how long this transition is going to take. And that is the time. If I make it really short, it's going to be perfect for maybe a pluck. But if I go really long, it's going to take a long time to get back to whatever key I'm playing, which is C3. Right? So, all of this just looked confusing, but it's very simple. Just the sub, we get the sync, and now we just can do a little bit of pitch modulation, that's all. Now, we have other ways to modulate the pitch. And this is something, again, very, very common on a lot of synthesizers. You have the pitch mod right there. And then you have the pulse width. We're going to talk about this in a minute, but first I'm going to be talking about this one. So we can modulate it with an LFO, and what will be modulated is the pitch. It's something like me going right here and doing something like that manually. And I'm doing manually. But instead of doing manually, we can outsource this, signal or this instruction to an LFO. Now, one thing that you need to know is that the oscillator number 1 is hardwired to the LFO number 1, and the oscillator number 2 is hardwired to the LFO number 2. So we cannot use the LFO number 2 on the oscillator number 1. We just can use the number 1. That's all. And right now, all of this is just grayed out because the LFO, it's off. And by default, they are off. So we need to turn it on if we want to get something. And we will talk about all of this. And right now, the modulation is just a sine wave. We can do a lot of things, but right now, it's just a sine wave. So now that it's on, I can go back right here and we have it enabled. So we have two different things. We're going to talk about the key in a minute, but the LFO, what it will do, it will just use that LFO to go up and down in pitch. Right? And I'm just pressing one key and holding it. How it's going to be going up and down in pitch? Well, this is how much. If I go all the way up and you can only go to 1, it's just going to be a little bit more aggressive. Maybe sometimes just doing a little bit, it's going to give you that nice detuning, especially when you use chords like... Does that you get that old vintage vibe detuning? Yeah, that's the LFO. Then of course you can go to the LFO and just change everything and go maybe super fast and do something else like that. For example, if I go up, it's gonna be really crazy. Oh, yeah, you can. Let me just go back to default. And the other way, we can go to positives. So it means that the LFO will start some point and then go up and down. But we can go into negatives, and it means that the LFO, whatever it is going to start on the other way. Negative. But that's fine. This is still, an LFO. We are modulating the pitch with an LFO. Now then we have the key, and this is a little bit weird to explain because it's something that you don't get on a lot of synthesizers, and it's cool. So when you have a 100%, it means that it's equally tempered. So if I play a C3, I'm gonna be getting a C3. I'm gonna show you a tuner. If I play a C higher, it's going to give me that C higher. If I play a C lower, it's going to give me that C lower. So where am I going with all of this? So whenever you have 100%, it means that whatever you play on your keyboard is going to be what's going to come out. A C, an A, or whatever. It's not going to mess the scaling. The difference is that when you go up or down, and this value is going to start to offset whatever scale that you're using on your keyboard. Now, C3, which is this one, is always going to be your center point. So if I go all the way up and I keep playing C3, nothing is going to change because C3 is your center point. But if I go up, for example, on this one, and I go to a C4, this is a little bit different. I don't get the C4, I just get an A, right? So this is going to mess the scaling of your keyboard. So let me just give you an example. I'm doing a C. So next, I'm going to do a D. I'm going to play all the white keys. Right now, I'm on a C3, so we get a C. And we are offsetting this by 164%. So it's going to be really weird. I'm going to play a D. Do I get D? No. I'm playing an F. And I'm playing a D3, the key next to C3, and I'm not getting it. So this will mess with your scaling. Sometimes it's useful and fun, depends on what you have. You can just get different things, and you can go the other way, and it's pretty much the same, but the other way. If I go to C, I get that, but now if I go to C, to D, I'm just getting it a little bit detuned, and if I go to E, I get a C sharp. So it's going to mess with your tuning. Now this is cool, but you need to be aware of that. If you change this, you might not get what you play. So then we have the pulse width. And pulse width is something that we get on a lot of analog synthesizers. It's very common. Nowadays, we can alter or use the pulse width and change the width of any waveform. But this is analog. This is emulating an analog synthesizer. So we cannot do it on pretty much all the waveforms that we have right here. So if I go to a sine wave, this is grayed out. If I go to a saw, this is grayed out. We cannot use it. But if I go to this one, the shape, we can use pulse width because this is a pulse. And we can only do it with a pulse, right? Pretty simple. So I'm going to play a C3. I'm going to sustain it. Now the width is going to be the width of this waveform. So if I go down, it's going to make it narrow. And at some point, it's going to be super narrow. Now if I go up, it's going to make it wider. Right? That's it. So something very common is that we modulate this and we can do something like this. And right now I'm just doing it manually. And it's something very common in a lot of analog synthesizers. Now, another thing is common is that what are you going to do? You're going to modulate manually the width? This is not the MS-20. We can do it with the LFO. So I can go to the LFO and outsource this instruction. And right now we are doing the LFO1. Remember, this is hardwired to the LFO1. And we are doing this much of width. Maybe we can go the other way. And right here, when we change this value, we are just like choosing the center point, and the LFO is going to go up and down for us, and we can change the rate, and this can give you that some classic, very classic sounds like right. So you get that classic old school vibe, which is something, very common. Let me just go back to nothing. So by default, your width is going to be 50%, and this is the default width of the pulse. You could just, maybe change it and use it like this, and you are going to be getting a different sound. Or just leave it at 50% and just use it like that. It's completely up to you. Now, if I go to the oscillator number 2, what's the difference with the number 1? Nothing. We get the same shapes. We can do the same things. Everything is going to be the same. And even the filter, everything is just the same. But the only difference, remember, is that the oscillator number 2 is hardwired to the LFO number 2. And that it's something that we cannot change. But everything else is just the same. Now then we have a noise generator, and as you could guess, this is just noise. If I play it, we are going to be getting noise. And this right here, just like we get with the oscillator 1 and 2, we can decide if we want to go to the filter number 2 or do 50-50 or maybe go to the number 1. Now you get something right here to color. And this is a cutoff. It's just like this one. We are cutting high frequencies, and we can just chop the high frequencies, and we can see it right there on the spectrum. That's it. It's just a filter. Okay, so let's talk about the filters. We already know the oscillators. I'm going to be covering this. So when we go to the filters, we have a lot of options, and it's just a little bit more confusing than this, but don't worry, I'm going to be covering pretty much everything. Now, one thing I'm going to need to do is go to the amp and go all the way up on the sustain, and I'm going to disable the envelope. We will reach this section in a minute. I just want to be back here. Now, since this might be your first synthesizer, I'm gonna kind of slow down and talk about the attack, how an ADSR works, what it is, and all of that. If you have experience, maybe you want to skip some parts because you're gonna get a little bit bored. So let's start talking about the main thing, which is going to be the different slopes that you have right here. So you have a filter, and what you do pretty much, let me just disable the oscillator number 2, just going to be using the number 1. What you do, you cut frequencies, and this is going to be your control. So in this case, we can see it right here, we have all the frequencies, and we can start chopping them down. This is a subtractive synth. We use a filter to remove the frequencies we don't want. Now then, you have the resonance. So at some point, this frequency control is cutting the high frequencies. So we do have some slope, or it's going to start cutting us someplace. Now the resonance is going to give us a bump on where the cutoff or the filter is starting to cut. So if I go up in resonance, it's going to start to expose this peak. So this is where it's starting to cut. So again, it's like a bump on the cut. Now if I move the frequency now, we can see where the frequency is cutting, and it's just pretty clear now. Now on the resonance, at some point, if you go all the way up, it's going to start resonating. You're going to start to get this sound, which, might be a little bit annoying sometimes, but it's cool because you can do those sweeps. But the key thing is that we are cutting frequencies with this control, and this one is exposing that cut by creating a bump at the cutoff. Right, for now I'm going to go all the way down and maybe just do a little bit of resonance so we can see that cut. Now then, you have different types of filters. You have a low pass, which is going to be cutting low frequencies, but it's a little bit less aggressive. Then you have the low pass 24 dBs per octave, which is going to be a little bit more aggressive. So this one is mild, this one is aggressive. Then you have a band pass, and it's the same thing. It's just going to be 6 dBs, less aggressive, and then the other one is going to be more aggressive. And I'm going to go to this one. So the band pass is just a band pass. It's going to cut lows and it's going to cut highs. And we move the frequency, or we're going to get just this part. We don't get this and we don't get this. Now the resonance will again do the same thing. It will give us that peak. If I don't do anything, it's just going to be a little bit weird when we move it right here because there's nothing there. So we need to expose it by doing a little bit of resonance. Alright, so that's the band pass. Then you have the notch, and the notch is completely not completely, but pretty much the opposite to the band pass. If I do notch, it's creating a notch at some place, some frequency. And the resonance is going to help to fine tune this. If we want it to be a sharp notch, or we want it to be super wide, something like that. And the frequency will just move that notch up and down in the spectrum. So then we have the high pass, and this is the opposite from the low pass. We are going to be cutting low frequencies. With the other one, we just cut highs. But this one, we cut the lows. So if I start right there, we are not doing anything. But if I keep moving up, we start cutting the low frequencies. And all of this is important because you can do a combination of this filter and this filter. And maybe this one is going to be chopping lows, and this one is going to be chopping highs or doing a notch. And you can start to get different combinations and, different sounds. Depends on how you use it. Now, the last one is going to be a formant. If you don't know what a formant is, it's going to expose some frequencies or just create a prominence on some frequencies. So formant, it's something something that we use the whole time on vocals to expose some frequencies, and we get this vocal sound. So if I play something, let me just go to 12 dBs because it's going to be pretty obvious. So I'm doing nothing. And still, we get something right here, and we get something right here, and notice this peak right there. Now, I'm going to start moving this, and we start to get this wow, like vocal sound, like it's talking. Well, this is the formant. Now, the resonance is going to shift where we are focusing this. And just by modulating the resonance and the frequency, you just can get this vocal type of sounds. So that's the formant. Pretty simple. Now, usually the most common filter that you will find in an analog synthesizer is just a low pass or a high pass. Okay, so I'm just going to go back to 24, all the way up in frequency and nothing on the resonance. And again, this might be a little bit easy for you because this is our very standard controls. But if you're starting, this is gold, right? Okay, so we have nothing. We are just not doing anything with the cutting, right? Right now we do, but no. Then we have all these options right here at the bottom. And the first thing we need to talk about is the frequency modulation. Now, what is frequency modulation? Well, this is called frequency, and we need to modulate this somehow. So when I do it manually, it's something like that. So all of this is just going to be a little bit about how we can modulate this control. Now, we can do it randomly like I'm doing right now, like if we use an LFO, or we can have a controlled movement that is going to happen every time we play a key. So let me just simulate that. If I play a key, what I want to do, I want to play it, I want to go up, and then I want it to go down. And I want to do this motion every time I play a key, but I don't want to do it with my mouse. I want to outsource this. So this is going to be this, is the envelope, this controls that we have right here at the top, and it's going to be this shape. This shape is how we are going to be moving this up and down. So right here at the bottom, frequency mod, this is like the brains. Right here, it will decide how much of this modulation we are going to be doing with what. And then you have a resonance modulation, which is the same, but for the resonance, which is something that you don't get on a lot of synthesizers, but it's cool that you get it right here. So this frequency mod will decide, do we want to do modulation with an LFO? Do we want to do modulation with a key tracking? We're going to talk about this one. Or we want to do modulation with an envelope. The most common type of modulation for the frequency is the envelope. This is like a classic, like the classic. And by default, it's doing a little bit. Notice it says 4. It doesn't say 0. So when we play a key, it's just doing a little bit of modulation. So let me just go all the way up. You can go all the way up to 16. So if I go to 4, which is what we had from before, maybe 4-ish, something like that, and I play a key, notice that this is like moving a little bit. It's just like that. Well, it's doing a little bit of modulation. How it's moving? Well, that's going to be the envelope. Now, and right here is the moment where I need to warn you, if you have some experience, you're going to get bored because I'm going to explain how attack, decay, sustain, and release, the ADSR, works. So we have attack, decay, sustain, and release. The S time, for now, forget that we have right here. This one, forget it, and this one, forget it. We are not going to be talking about this. We're going to be talking about this in a minute, but for now, we need to learn the basics. And you need to make sure that on the amp envelope, this is to 0, all the way up on the sustain, and we have a little bit of tail, like this one right here. We have these values, right? So I'm going to go right here. What I want to do, I want to play a key and then go up like this. And for now, I'm going to go all the way back to 0, maybe 5 is the lowest you can go. The decay is going to be all the way down, sustain all the way down, release all the way down. If I play a key, we get like a pluck. It's very, very, very mild, so we don't get a lot. So what it's doing behind the scenes, it's taking 5 milliseconds and modulate this up and down with the attack and the decay. Now, the attack, the decay, and the release are time-based controls. But the sustain, it's not. Notice it doesn't say a mess. And it's because it's a level control. It's like a gain. Okay, so let's start with the attack. When we play a key, I want this to go up in this fashion by some amount, and then I want it to go down. Okay, so I'm going to go all the way up, or maybe just to 10 or something like that. And then we can take it from there. And this is going to decide how much of this envelope we are doing here. So I want for this to go up when I play a key. So the attack is going to be how slow it's going to take from here when we play a key to reach a maximum peak, and then we're going to go back. But this is going to decide how long it takes to go up. That's the attack. So if we have 5 milliseconds, it's going to be super fast. So if I make it slower, we can see it right here on the envelope. It's just going to say it's going to take some time. By default, you don't have exponential. I'm going to go to linear, and then we will talk about the exponential. It's going to be easier to learn with linear. So right now, it's going to start like this. The frequency is going to move up. It's going to take 340 milliseconds, and then it's going to go back and down. Notice that we get something. So I play a key, it's going up, it's taking 340 milliseconds, and then it's going back. Now what happens if I make it really slow so we can just tell the difference? It's going to take 2 seconds. It's going to slowly go up in frequency right here. And then at some point, it's going to die, right? It's take 1, 2, and dies. And this is because we have nothing right here. So this decides how long it's going to take to go up, but not how long it's going to take to go back. And that's going to be the decay. So right now, it's 5 milliseconds, which is super fast. It's going slowly up, but super fast down. So if I decide to have some decay, like maybe pretty much about the same thing, like 2 seconds, now it's going to take 2 seconds to go up, and then 2 seconds to go down. But still, just going down pretty much to nothing. But that's how we do it. It's going to take 2 seconds to go up, and then 2 seconds to go down. That's the attack, and that's the decay. Now then you have something called the sustain. So right now I'm playing a key, it's going up, it's going down, and I'm not releasing the key, I'm still holding. So you can see right here that we have some frequency, so I'm still holding the key. What happens if I don't want to go all the way back if I'm still holding a key? So that's the sustain. And notice this is not a time-based control, it's a level. It's going to be, where do we want to stay? We want to stay right here? Do we want to stay right here, or maybe all the way at the top? So this is a level. That's why right here we have a representation of how long it's going to take to go up, how long it's going to take to go down. But if we are sustaining, instead of going all the way down, it's going to stay somewhere in between. So if I play it, it's going to go up, it's going to go down, and then it's sustaining at some point. Let me just do the decay 2 seconds. And I'm going to do less sustain, something like that. I'm going to play a key. It's going to take a long time to go up, long time to go down, but it's not going all the way down. It's just staying at this point. Now, if I go back to the sustain and I change it to 50%, let's say, to be around here, it's going to go up, it's going to go down, but not all the way down. It's just going to sustain higher. Now, when you use sustain and you use decay, if you go all the way up on the sustain, you're disabling the decay stage. There is no decay. I'm going to go up, and then it's staying at the top because the sustain, it's all the way up. And if you want to do a little bit, it's going to go up, it's going to go down just a little bit. It's almost unnoticeable. So let me just go maybe a little bit down. Let's do it again. It's going to go up. You should be going down just a little bit. it's just, almost unnoticeable. Let me just go down a little bit. It's going to go up, then down. And there you go. It's super small. So yeah, you need to fine tune all of this just to get what you want. It's going to take 2 seconds on the decay and then it's going down, right? But it's staying right there. So that's the sustain. Now notice when I play a key, I'm going to make this 1 second so it's going to be a little bit faster. Now when I play a key, it goes up, it goes down, and then it stays right here. But if I release a key, the sound, it's dying super fast. Goes up, goes down. I'm going to release the key in 3, 2, 1. The sound dies. And it just dies. What if we don't want this? We want to smoothly go out in time. So that's the release. What's going to happen when you release a key? And right now it's saying, okay, it's going to take me 5 milliseconds to go to full silence. So if I play a key, but in this case, I'm just going to make it longer. It's going to take maybe 2 seconds to die. I go up, it's going to go down, it's going to sustain. And if I release a key, now it's going to take a little bit more time. Now, it's super fast. Why is it super fast? And it's because the amp, it's controlling the volume that goes out of the synthesizer. So if the sustain or the release is super short, it doesn't matter. We make it 2 seconds right here. The volume is going all the way down way before we hear this release. So I'm going to make the release a little bit longer, just 4 seconds, which is, crazy, but this is just going to work. I'm going to play a key. It's going to go down, sustain, and I'm going to release in 3, 2, 1. And we can slowly fade the sound out. In this case, what it's doing is going up, a little bit down, is sustaining, and we re-release the keys, is going back to its original place. Now, all of this is just a very common thing, and this is how ADSR works. Once you understand this, you're going to be able to understand like all the synthesizers that have some ADSR stage or some envelope stage, because it's pretty much the same. And now that we know this, I don't need to explain this because it works the same way. Okay, so let's just keep moving forward. Now, then you have other options which are not that common, like the S-time right here. You have the loop, the attack and velocity, and then you have the slope right there. Okay, so I'm going to be first going to the slope because it's just very simple. So when I play something and we do it something like that, notice that it's going up. And for now, I'm just going to maybe go all the way up on the sustain. And how it's going up is in a linear fashion. It's starting here and going like that. Then there's no stopping it. There's no motion, no curve, no smoothing, nothing. It's just super linear. Now the other one is going to be exponential. And this is going to change how the curves work. Now in this case, it's going to start super fast and it's going to sustain at some point right here. That's the slope. It's like slowing down right here until it reaches the maximum point. Now, since I'm doing sustain all the way up, it's pretty unnoticeable. I'm going to be doing something like that. And then it's going to go down. So notice it's super fast at the beginning. And then it's going to sustain right here at the top. And then it's going to decay. So that's the exponential. If I do linear, it's just up and down. Maybe I'm sustaining... I'm decaying 4 seconds. That's the problem. So let me just go right there. If I do exponential, fast, sustains, and then goes back. It's just a little bit different. So it depends on what you want to do. You need to decide which one you want to use. Now then you have the S time right here. Right now, inf S, it means nothing. It's all the way down. So if I go right here, notice how it's changing the sustain. It's happening right there. Let me make it a little bit obvious. I'm going to go right there. And what it's doing is just modifying how the sustain works. Now remember, when we play a key and we go up and we have some decay stage, we are staying right here. And it's not going to move until I release the key and we go to the release stage. Now, the S time, what it does is going to, when we are holding a key, it's going to hold it at some point, but it's going to slowly transition and go down in, on the position where we are sustaining. So if I play it again, it goes up, goes down, and then goes down to the sustain stage, which is pretty low at this point. Let me just go maybe up a little bit more, or just maybe go up right here. Let's go up, a little bit of decay, and then the sustain is going to fade out. So that's, the S time. Now, this is, again, not a very common, control that you get on all the synthesizers, but it's cool. Let's move on to the next thing, and this one is going to be the attack and velocity. And notice it says attack, and then the arrow, it's pointing towards velocity, or the velocity is pointing towards the attack. So this is what it means. It's that the velocity of how we play the keys is going to affect the attack. And this is pretty simple. I'm going to maybe do some long attack, so we know it's going to be, it's going to take a long time. So if I play it, maybe 15 seconds is too much. I'm going to maybe do 3 seconds. So if I play it, it's going to go up. And for now, I'm just going to keep the sustain all the way up. But it's taking a long time to go up because we said 3 seconds. So now if I play the key softer, it's going to do that. Now if I play the key harder, it's going to do it the same way. So this is what it means. If we play hard or we play soft, this is going to affect the attack. So if I go all the way up, just to prove how this works, if I do soft, it's going to go slow. But now, if I go fast, the attack is going to be faster, right? I'm going to play it soft. It's super slow, like super slow. But now I'm going to play the keys harder, so it means more velocity, and it's super fast. Right, so this is what the attack and velocity means. It's going to alter the values on the attack depending on how we play the keys in terms of velocity. Now then we have the other side, which is going to be envelope and velocity. And for now, I'm just going to do something like this, maybe a long decay or something like that, and a little bit of sustain and a little bit of release, right? So if I play something, it's going to be something like that. And if I release it, it's going to go out. So the envelope, and this works pretty much the same. The velocity is affecting the attack. But now on this one, the velocity is going to affect the whole envelope. So all the values are going to be scaled depending on what we have right here. And I'm going to go all the way up just like with it, and we can prove this. So if I play soft, it's going to be very soft. If I play hard, it's going to be super hard. And if I play kind of a mid-intensity, it's going to be like that. Like that. If I play super soft, it's going to be super soft. So yeah, this is going to change how the velocity or the envelope is going to work depending on how hard you hit the keys. Okay, so we covered pretty much everything. We still need to talk about the loop, but all of this section we have right here at the top, we covered this. Now we know that we can do modulation with envelope, but you have other options. You have the LFO and you have key tracking. And for now, I'm going to go to nothing on the envelope. So whatever I play is not going to affect the frequency. I'm just going to do a little bit of resonance and leave it right there. And we need to talk about this. Now, the LFO is just like works like the oscillator. This one is going to be tied to the LFO1. So if it's off, it's going to be off. When I turn it on and go back, now it's on. So it's going to do modulation. It's going to move the frequency following the LFO. If I go faster, it's going to be faster. If I go slower on the LFO, it's going to be slower. That's what it means. It's just pretty simple. And this is how aggressive that LFO is going to be. So if I go down, we're just going to be doing a little bit. If I go super hard, it's just going to be more. Right? So pretty simple control. Now if I double click, it's going to go back to the original value. Now we need to talk about the key track. And it's something you have on pretty much any synthesizer. And it's a little bit weird to explain. I'm going to explain it on a very easy way. Okay. So right now, the key tracking is pretty much nothing. I have a lot of sustain on the amp. Let me go a little bit less. I'm going to go there. So if I play it, and it's going to, go down in volume very smoothly. All right. Let's talk about the key track. So I'm going to be playing, I'm going to be doing something like this. Okay. So we can see when we do something like this, that we are cutting right there, and we have this peak right here. Now, if I play a low key, the peak is right here. If I play an octave higher, the peak is on the same place, the peak is on the same place, and I keep playing higher keys, but the peak is always on the same place. So this means that when I play a key, it doesn't matter if I'm playing low keys or higher keys. The frequency is going to be always the same. We're going to be always standing on 2.2K when we just, cut up frequencies in this case, because we are using a low pass. So this means that the frequency is not affected by how we play the keys. Now, the key tracking is going to do the opposite. It's going to move the frequency controls, like moving it up or moving it down, depending on which key we are playing. So now if I go up all the way down on this one, now the frequency or that peak is going to start moving. So if I play a low key, notice that we get nothing. If I play a high key, we get it, but it's just a little bit different. And if I play a high key, it's going to be right here. Now, from this key, I'm doing C3. And I'm going to start playing all the white keys, right? See, it's going to be a D, and then go on, and on, and on. Notice the difference. The peak, it's moving. And I'm being very aggressive. Let me just go maybe to 2. So what it means is that when we play low keys, we are cutting less, more of the high frequencies. And when we play higher keys, it's going to be cutting less. It's like we play high keys, this is just going to be moved like that. If we play low keys, it's going to be that. So it's going to be brighter for higher keys, darker for lower keys. That's what the key track is going to do for us. So again, if I go and play C, as soon as I play the next key, that peak is moving, which means that the frequency is moving. And when I say frequency, I mean the cutoff frequency. Now, what is the point of all of this? Now, sometimes you're going to be playing playing some keys. So you're going to be playing a lower, you're going to be doing some cutoff like that, let's say. I'm going to be playing a low key and we get something. But if I want to play higher keys, we don't hear them because we are cutting them with a frequency. And the key tracking, it's not modifying the frequency. So we are cutting a lot of the high keys. We cannot hear them. So the key tracking will allow the high keys to shine. We can hear them now. If I play a low key, we can hear the low key, but if I play higher keys, we can hear them. Now, all of this depends on how much you're doing right here. We can do just a tiny bit and get closer to maybe 1. We can hear the low frequency, but now I can hear the high frequencies. If I go all the way down, this is going to be completely different. Oh, let me go right there. You can, right? So we are cutting a lot and we are not getting the higher keys. Now you can go the other way. This is just going to do the opposite. Now the lower keys are going to be brighter and the higher keys are going to be darker. So low key, we get a lot. High key, we get less. And notice that we get pretty much nothing if I play higher keys. So it's just the opposite. So it depends on what you want to do. You want to do a key tracking. If you're playing some keys and you are playing with both hands, maybe a little bit of key tracking will do good. But if you're let's say you're creating a bass patch, maybe disabling the key tracking or having less key tracking is going to help you. Now, on the other side, we have the rest mod, and this works the same. So I don't need to do a lot of explaining because it works the same than the frequency mod. Now, the difference is that we are modulating this control, which is something not so common on all synthesizers. We can do it with an LFO. It's going to be wild. So I'm going to go back. It's modulating this, not this. Now, same thing with the key tracking. Works the same way. Low keys, higher keys is just going to go aggressive. And then the envelope is just going to work the same way. It's going to move it up and then down depending on what we are doing on the envelope. Now then we have another thing, which is going to be the drive. Now usually on analog synthesizers, you get a little bit of drive because you have an analog circuit. So this is what it gives you. It gives you a little bit of saturation on pretty much all the different types that you have right here. By default, you have this one, but you can just turn it off and, do nothing. If you go up in resonance, it's going to be a little bit more obvious. Let me just go up and up. So different drives are just going to give you different tones. Now this is just a little bit more aggressive. Different, way aggressive. A little bit less, a little bit more, and a little bit more. So just different types of drive. Depends on what you want to do. Okay, I'm starting with the default patch, and I'm going to go to the amp and do the same thing I did before. I'm going to go all the way up on the sustain, and I'm going to go back because I want to talk about the loop. Now, this is something very simple. Now, right now, the loop is completely off, and we are doing a little bit of envelope. I'm going to do about 10. So if I do something like that, I'm going to adjust the attack. I'm going to do it like that. And we already know how this works. I don't need to explain it again. I'm going to be moving the frequencies, and I'm going to be doing a little bit of resonance. So we're going to see it moving up, then sustaining at some point, and then going down if it's going down. Let me just do it like that. There we go. It's just going down. All right. So there we have the loop. By default, it's off. So it means whatever we do on the envelope, it's just going to be doing that, right? Okay, so if I go to AD, it says, okay, so we are going to do AD and then we're going to do R. So this is called loop. So it means it's going to loop something. And in this case, it's going to be the attack and the decay. So if I go to that section, I'm going to be playing it. And here's what is happening. I'm holding the keys and it's looping the A and the D, the attack and the decay. Now, if I make this a little bit shorter, it's going to be a little bit obvious. Right? I'm going to be using the oscillator number 1. So that's what is happening. It's just looping a portion of the envelope. So what is going to happen with the ADSR? So this is pretty much the same thing, but it's a little bit more aggressive because now it's like cycling through everything without sustain. And it's just, kind of repeating it over and over as I hold the keys. Right? Pretty simple. Now then we have the other one, and the other one is just a little bit more specific. It says ADS, and then it's going to do the AR. So I'm going to select this one, and maybe I'm going to be doing something like this, and maybe I'm going to do something like this. Let's see if we can find a good example. So right now we are going up, staying right there, going down, and keeping right here on the sustain. So we play a key, goes up, goes down, the decay, and it stays right there. Now when I release the keys, it's just doing something like that. Oh, there we see it. So now if I play a key, it's going to go up, it's going to go down, sustain, but I'm going to release it, and it's going to kind of like go back to whatever we had, it's going to go up again. It's like doing an AR at the end. So that's the difference. That's pretty much the difference. Now, if I do less sustain, maybe it's going to be a little bit obvious. It's going to go up, it's going to go down, and I release the key, and it's going to go up again. Now, if I go to off, we are not going to get that. It's going to go up, it's going to go down, and when I release the keys, it's just going to die. So this is what it means. It goes up, it goes down, and then I release the key, and it's going to repeat the AR. Right? So that's what it means. It's pretty simple. So this, of course, this depends on what you want to do with the envelopes right here. Now, let me adjust the envelopes just a tiny bit. So we are going to be doing some attack, some decay. We are doing a little bit of sustain, and then, the release, but right now the release doesn't matter much. So I'm going to be playing a key. We're going to go up, we're going to go down, and sustain at this point. Now, the free, what it's going to do is like, it's a little bit weird. It's like disabling the sustain stage, but at the same time, it's like it's going to jump if we have a value on the sustain. So let me just show you. Right now, again, we go up, we go down. It's going to stay right there because we are sustaining at that point. Now, if I do free, it's going to go up, it's going to go down, and when it reaches this point, which is the sustain stage, it's going to go all the way down. If decay stays where we reach the sustain, jumps all the way back. So there's no sustain or no motion right here if we reach this section. It's like stride going right here to this one. Now, if I go all the way down on the sustain, we are going to be able to hear the decay go all the way down. But if we have some sustain at some point, it's just going to hit the sustain and just jump back. Let me just make the decay longer. It's going to decay. Or maybe not, because it's just too long. It's going to take a long time. It's going to go down at some point and then jump back. So this is what the free is going to do. So on the amp, it's going to be a little bit easier because a lot of the features we have right here, we already covered them on the filters. So yeah, notice it looks pretty much the same, and it's because it is the same. It's just the same. The only difference is that the amp is going to control the volume, is how the volume goes out of the synthesizer to whatever, effect or other channel in this case. So again, the amp controls volume. That's what it does. This one controls the frequency and the filtering and the resonance, and this one controls volume. So you have two amps. The amp number one is going to control whatever routing we have right here. We're going to talk about that in a minute. And then you have a second amp, and the amp, this one, is going to be for this line for the oscillator number 2, but it's going to be tied to the LFO number 2, and this one is tied to the LFO number 1, just like we have on the oscillators. All right, so let's just start with the basics. I'm going to go to the amp number 1. What do we have first? Well, we have the envelopes, and we have a way to modulate the only two params that we have right here, which is the pan and the level. And as you could guess, the level is going to go up in level or go down in level. Pretty easy, right? Then we have the pan. It's going to go all the way to the left, to the right in this case, or it's going to go all the way to the left. And you can turn it off because maybe you want to route all to the amp number 2. So now then we have the envelopes, and I feel, again, I don't need to talk about this. We are going to be deciding how much of this we are going to be doing to go out, and this is decided by the envelope. In the case of the frequency, we need to manually go and say, dude, we are going to be working with the frequency and we are going to use the envelope by this much. On the amp, you don't get something like this. By default, the envelope, it's 100%. You're using 100% of the envelope. You don't have a choice. This is how it works. Now, how it's going to control how the volume goes out, and for now I'm just going to go all the way down on this one, is by using this, and it works the same than this. If I do a slow attack, and for now I'm going to go to linear, it's going to take a long time, or maybe some time, and for now I'm just going to go all the way down, all the way down, all the way down. Remember, this controls volume, so it's going to go up in volume slowly, and then at some point it's going to die because we have no decay. So if I want to smoothly go down, then I'm going to go up on the decay, and it's going to take 1 second to go down in volume. And we go down smoothly. What happens if we want to sustain? If we're holding a key, well, we need some sustain. So I'm going to be going up, it's going to go down a little bit, and then it's going to sustain around here. So remember, it's just the same thing we did right here, but with volume. And then if I release a key, it's just going to die instantly. So in this case, if we want it for the sound to die smoothly, we need to add some release. And now it's going to go down, and when I release the keys, it's going to take almost a second to die. So remember, it's just the same we had on the filters, but right here. Now the loop, it's the same we have on the filter, but in this case, it's going to be with volume. Then we have the attack to velocity. This works the same way. If I go all the way up and I press very slowly, notice the volume and the attack, or actually the attack, it's super slow. But if I play hard, it's going to be super fast. Same thing we did on the filter. Now, if we go to the envelope and velocity, this one, it will work the same as this one. So velocity, whatever we do on the keyboard, is going to control and scale down or scale up all the controls, all the values we have on the envelope. So if I go all the way down, up on this one, I'm going to be playing a key, and I'm going to play it soft. So the volume, it's relatively low. But if I play hard, everything is going to be super scaled. So you need to be careful with this one. Now the S time works the same than this one. We can scale the S time right here, the sustain, and just make it go down in time when we sustain. Pretty simple. And if you don't know how this works, you will need to go and check this out when we talk about this. And then we have some other features, and these ones are a little bit different. We have the pan mod and the level mod. Right, so we modulate the panning. Pretty easy. We can do it with the LFO1, and by default, the LFO1, it's hardwired or pre-wired to the LFO1. So if I play something like that, and for now, I'm just gonna sustain it all the way up, do something like that, so we have something a little bit more useful. I'm gonna go down in level. If I go up on the LFO, it's gonna start modulating the panning. It's like me doing something like this. and it's using this instruction to do it. We're going to talk about the LFO in a minute. Right? Pretty easy. Now then we have the envelope, right? Which is what we don't have right here, and this is the same than this. We can use the envelope or whatever we are doing right here to modulate the panning. Now, this spectrum shows you how the sound goes out. It's a stereo spectrum. So you have the yellow, which is going to be, I guess, the right one, and the pink one is going to be the left side of the speaker. So right speaker, left speaker. And that is how it's offsetting. And we can actually hear it. The right side, it's a little bit more prominent. We get like the normal thing, but the other one, it's being scaled down. So we have less on the left side. So it's gonna like moving the panning towards the right side. But this is being decided by the envelope. When I release the keys, both are gonna go to normal. Right? So this is what it does. This is pretty easy. Now you can go the other way, and it's gonna go to the right side. Sounds like that. I play a key, it's gonna slowly go there. And we can actually do a slow attack, and we can hear that motion. There's that. First, we start with the left and the right on the same spot, and then it's going to start offsetting, following the envelope instruction. And when I release it, it's going to go back to the original one. You know, they go back to the same. Now, the key is something really cool. So you can go to 1 or you can go to -1. On 0, nothing happens. If I play a low key, it's the same thing. If I play a high key, it's going to be the same. And if I play a super high key, it's just going to be the same. Now, if I go all the way to the 1, now the higher keys are going to be on the right side of the speaker. But if I play a low key, it's going to be on the left side of the speaker. But this is what it does. Now, you can select some in-betweens if you wanted to. So I can go right there. And this one is going to be, you know, I'm getting a little bit of that. Let me just get closer to C3. Now, when I get closer to C3, everything is at center. But as I go away or off Z3, it's going to start moving it more to the left as we go up on the higher keys. Now, if I go to the other side, it's going to be completely the opposite. The higher keys are going to be in the left, and the lower keys are going to be in the right. Right, so pretty easy. That's what it does. I'm going to double click it and go back to default. So now we need to talk about the level. Now the level is, very simple. It's just the volume that goes out. So we have the LFO. What do you think the LFO is going to do? Well, if I go up, it's going to modulate the volume up and down. And if you think about what it is a tremolo. That is what a tremolo is going to do. It's going to modulate the volume up and down. And if I play something, it's going to do just that. Now we can go faster with the LFO, which is slower. And you must not confuse tremolo with vibrato, which is something we have right here. The vibrato is going to modulate pitch. This one modulates amplitude. And if I go aggressively, it's just going to be a little bit more aggressive. Right? Now, then you have the key, and this one, notice that all the keys are going to interact on where we play the keys. If we play low keys or we play high keys, it's going to do something or it's going to do something else. Now, in this case, it's pretty much the same, but with level, with volume. In this case, if I go up on the keys, and you can go all the way up to 1 or all the way down to 1. If I go all the way up to 1, you're going to start hearing this. I'm going to be playing low keys, and it sounds pretty low. I'm going to be playing high key. It sounds super loud. So low keys are going to be lower in volume, and higher keys, or higher frequencies are going to be high in volume. Now, if I go back to 1 or 0, everything is pretty much the same level. And if I go to the other side, it's going to be completely the opposite. The higher keys are going to be low in volume, but the lower keys are just going to be super high in volume. Now, I don't know if you noticed, but we covered all of this, it was challenging. All of this and all of this, a lot of things. We covered like 80% of the synth. Now, we still need to talk about the LFO, which is a very simple topic, and some options that we get right here. This one looks challenging again, like the rest, but now, now it's going to be a little bit easier to explain all of this. All right. Okay, so back to a default patch. Let's talk about the LFO. So again, like before, I'm going to go all the way down and all the way up on the sustain. So we have something constant. And I'm going to disable the oscillator number 2. So we have only the number 1. I'm going to enable the number 1, the LFO number 1. And the controls right here are very simple. This part belongs to this, and this belongs to the LFO number 2. So we can go up in the speed. We can use hertz. Or we can sync it to your DAW tempo and use subdivisions, right? Now let's just hear it or get it on something. I'm going to go to the oscillator number 1 and we can do pitch modulation on this one. So I'm going to be going up and doing something like that. And remember, you can use hertz or you can use subdivisions because it depends on what you're doing. Maybe you want to sync it to whatever track you're creating. All of this is just very simple. Now we need to talk about what's going on right here. Right, so we can start from this side because it's easier, and then all of this is just very simple, but we need to do a little bit of explaining. So right now we are using a sine wave, and this belongs to the LFO 1, and this belongs to the LFO 2. So we can go right there, use a sine wave, pretty easy. We can use a triangle. We can use a rect, which is a square, or a pulse. And then we can use noise 1. And now, whenever you think noise, in this case, is a way to say random. So notice that we don't have a pattern, it's just random. And then the noise 2 is the same random, but instead of just going really aggressive on the changes, notice it's just very abruptly changing the pitch, is going to smooth the changes up and down. That's the difference. Now, on the rect, which is the pulse, we can adjust the width, just like we did, with the oscillators, where we can do pulse width. Well, this is just the same. If we make it short, it's going to be very short. If we make it wide, it's going to sustain a little bit longer. All right. So that's it. It's super simple. The LFO is not out of this world. It's a very simple LFO. Now, then you have the retrigger, and this one, it's going to be a little bit weird to explain. Okay, so let me go to the amp and make it a little bit less right here. I'm actually going to go all the way down so we can have something like that. So right now we are actually saying LFO, go and detune the pitch. So if I go back to the LFO, we are using a rect, which is going to be a pulse. So it's going to be the pitch, it's going to be up or it's going to be down, right? Because this is like an on and off. The rect is like an on and off. If I play it, it's going to be on, off, on, off. Maybe I'm doing too much. It's like not even cats can hear that. Right. So when I use it and I hold the key, it's going to be up, down, up, down. This is what the pulse or the square can do. Right. So what is going to happen with retrigger? Now, if I play a key, I'm going to go a key and I'm going to tap it several times. And I'm just tapping it. I'm not holding, I'm just pressing it several times. Notice that sometimes we start on a low frequency and sometimes we start on a higher frequency. And if I stop and start over again, it's just the same thing. So it's not very predictable. Now, behind the scenes, this is emulating analog, and what happens on analog is that the LFOs are non-stopping, are just constant. The LFO is a waveform that you see right here, that it's constantly moving, and it will never, ever, ever stop. So you don't have a way to say, hey, LFO, start doing your job when I press a key, and only when I press a key. By default, the LFO is just going to keep going and going and going. It doesn't care if you play a key or not. It doesn't matter. It just doesn't care. That's why when I play a key, it's just starting up or down. Depends on where that LFO in time it is, right? It's just that. So this is not very controllable because if I do it, sometimes it's going to be up and sometimes it's going to be down. Maybe what I want to start on the same place always when I play a key. Well, that's the retrigger. It's going to retrigger the waveform so it can always start from the beginning or the same place. So I'm going to enable retrigger and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to be playing this and notice that now it's a little bit different. it's always starting from the beginning of the waveform, which is up. So we always start with a pitch up. If I do off, sometimes up, down, sometimes down. So with the retrigger, you make sure that you always start from the beginning of the waveform and you don't start maybe here or here or here or here. Now still, what if you don't want to start all the way up on the waveform? So you have the offset. Now this one is going to move the waveform, and instead of maybe starting up like we are doing right now, we're going to be starting down. So if I play it now, we're going to start down. Now if I hold the key, still it's just, it's going to do the LFO because I'm holding the key. Now this makes a little bit more sense when we maybe use a sine wave. Right now we are starting right here and then it goes down. But I can offset this and say, you know what? I'm going to be starting from this part and then go down. So we start high and then we go down. So now when you play different keys, you can't predict it. Now if I do retrigger and I do the same thing, sometimes it's just going to be a little bit uncontrollable. And I'm just playing different keys right now. I'm making a chord. I'll try it. So again, it's just a little bit uncontrollable. Now this depends always on what you want to do. Maybe you want this constant non-stopping behavior, or maybe you want to retrigger the waveform when you start playing. If you want that, then you enable retrigger and then you choose where you want to start on the waveform. Alright, so I'm going to go and double click and go back to the beginning. Now then we have the delay and the attack. And this is a fantastic thing that we get on some synthesizers. We don't get it on all. So right now, and let me do something useful because this is just going crazy. I'm going to do something like that. I want to do a modulation like that. And when I make a chord, maybe it's too much. Let me just go back. And I want to give you a real life example. So that's going to give you, that vintage sound by modulating the pitch up and down. It's very small. We can't hear it. And it's a very common thing. We do it the whole time, especially when you use a Juno, for example, using the LFO to move the pitch up and down gives you that vibe. Now, the problem is that sometimes when you're playing or doing something like this, it's going to start right away. So what you can do, you can delay the effect. So I'm going to say, maybe I want to start this LFO a second after I play the keys. So now I'm going to make a chord. It's going to start with no LFO and then it's going to LFO. So that's what it means. So if you play a chord and you hold it, at some point you are going to be getting this modulation. Or if you play some keys, you make sure that you don't get this modulation when you play staccato. Only you get it when you sustain the keys, right? That's the whole point. Now, one thing you need to notice is that whenever it starts to do the LFO, it's pretty aggressive. So the attack is going to provide a little bit of a smoothness. Let me do it a little bit more aggressive so we can really hear that. Maybe one is too much. I'm going to go to something like that. So back to the LFO. We are doing some delay. Maybe I'm going to do 2 seconds and then I'm going to go to the attack. Now, if I do it like that, boom, super aggressive. I don't want this. What I want to do is to slowly introduce the modulation, or the LFO in this case, to the detuning. So we are going to be doing attack, and I'm going to say, dude, you're going to take 1 second, but you're going to ramp up that modulation. Notice that right now it's a little bit smoother, and we can even make it more smooth. I'm going to go there to say 4 seconds. It's a long time. And it's super smooth. And at some point, it's going to reach, peak, and we're going to get full modulation. But it's just a nice way to control whatever it is that you do on your LFO. And all of this will affect all the properties where we use the LFO, like the pitch, or we can use the pulse width. It's just still going to affect it. The same thing with with the filter, and same thing on the amp. So that's it. It's a pretty simple LFO, and this one belongs to the LFO number 2. that belongs to different sections, maybe the oscillator number 2 and the filter number 2 and the amp number 2. So that's the only difference. Okay, so let's just keep going. I'm going to start on a default patch like before, and I'm going to go all the way down right here on the envelope and all the way up on the sustain. And we need to talk about the things that are going to happen right here. So first of all, this is the volume that goes out. I feel like I don't need to explain it. So it's just the volume, right? I'm going to go up and down in volume, and I'm going to turn this one off. I don't want it. I just want oscillator. So then we're going to go in order right here. So we have the vibrato. The vibrato, it's just a vibrato. Now remember we talked about this, that this is a tremolo, and the tremolo is going to go up and down in volume. So this one goes up and down in pitch. Pretty much. So if I go all the way up, we can clearly hear this. Now if I go down on the rate, this is how fast it's gonna go. And if I go down, we can right there see it moving up and down. Same thing right here. So that's what it does. It's gonna give you this vibrato. Now, you have extended controls for this. Let me just put it around, maybe around there. Now, since this is a polyphonic instrument, whenever you play a key, that vibrato is going to start someplace, but it's going to start when you play the key. So each voice that you play, each key will move on its own way, and I can actually prove this. I'm going to be going to a lower octave, and I'm going to be playing a higher octave. And now I'm going to be playing a higher octave. Notice they move a little bit different. They don't move the same. They just move against the other ones. And it's because when you have a polyphonic instrument, not everything is going to be aligned. In this case, each voice, this is starting from where we play the key. So this is how it works right here. And remember, right there are the voices. We need to talk about this in a minute. Now, the thing is that on this one, you have extended controls. You have a delay, attack, amount, and error. Now, for now, so we can actually see it, let me just go right there. I need to show you the error. It's just a little bit weird. Maybe 3 is going to be enough. Yeah. Okay, so maybe 2. Yeah. Okay, so the error on analog synthesizers, what you get is a little bit of inconsistency. And I'm talking about the controls and how it works. Sometimes the times are not going to be right in tune. So you will have this natural, let's say, detuning or, inconsistency on all the controls. So this, what it does is going to add a little bit of that. So now this is going to be a little bit inconsistent. So if I play a key, it's going to go that rate. If I play it again, notice it's going faster now. It's just a tiny little bit. But if I play it again, slower, a little bit faster, right? So this is what the error means. It's going to give you that inconsistency with the values that you selected. Now then you have the amount right there, and this one is pretty simple. MW, it's mod wheel. So if you're using a MIDI controller, you can go all the way up on this one, and now your mod wheel will control how much vibrato you're doing. So if I play a chord, we have very little to nothing. If I go up on my mod wheel, I'm going all the way up right now, we get something. And if I go down, we have pretty much, not a lot. If I go up, we have less. So it's just the mod wheel, how much you want to go up. I'm going really aggressive, maybe 70%. It's something that it's going to be a little bit more normal. If I go up, you can see it moving, or you can hear it moving as well. But yeah, this is the mod wheel control. Now, the other one is pretty simple. I'm going to go aggressive. The delay is the same thing we discussed on the LFO, the delay and the attack. Well, this is the same. So if I play a key right now, it's going to start right away, but we can delay that motion by some amount. In this case, 138 seconds. Yeah, 138. So if I play a key, it's going to take a little bit to kick in. And the attack is how smooth that transition is going to happen. I'm going to do maybe 3 or 4 seconds. So if I play a key, it's going to start doing it, but it's going to start slowly. It's going to smooth in. So this is the same, it works the same with the alphos, right? With the delay in the attack. We don't need to overthink this. This is what it does. Now, the next one is going to be unison. Now, if you don't know what unison is that you stack voices, for example. Now, on this synthesizer, you have 8 voices. You can do a lot, like 32. So when you enable the unison voices, it's saying, dude, you can play 2 voices on unison. So it means that if you play a key, 2 voices are going to be playing behind the scenes. And you can actually hear this. If I play it, notice it sounds a little bit weird. And if I turn it off, it sounds a little bit more clear. Now a little bit weird. It sounds phasey, right? And it's because you have 2 voices playing the same thing on top of each other. So you're stacking voices. Now, since you're stacking voices and your maximum amount of voices is limited to 8, this means that you can only play 4 keys, right? If I go right there and say that my synthesizer can only do 2 keys, it means that right now, if we do unison, we can play not 2 keys, we can only play 1 key because each key is going to use 2 of these voices, right? So you always need to be aware of this. So where's the magic on this one? I'm going to go to 8. Now, the magic is that when you start to detune the duplicated voices, the stacked voices, you're going to get this big, super beautiful sound. So I'm going to go up on the detune. And notice what's going on now. We get a bigger sound, right? Now, if you go crazy at some point, you're just detuning too much, and you're going to get a crazy sound. So bigger, crazy. But this is what the detune is going to do. You're just separating the voices so they don't sound super phasey like now. Now, you can go right there and have 4 voices per key. So if you play a key, you can have 4 stacked voices on each key. Now, since you have 8 voices in total, now you can play only 2 keys, right? 1 key is 4 voices. The other one is going to be 8. If I do a new one, it's just going to dispose one of the keys I was playing. It's just going to steal voices. So yeah, now, if you want to do a lot of voices, maybe play a chord, 7th chord, I don't know, and do 4 unison voices, you can go and change your voices to 32, and you can do whatever the F you want right here. Now, for now, I'm just going to go back to 8, and I'm going to go back to 2, because maybe 4 is too much. So you have something called delay. And this is something a little bit weird that you don't find on a lot of synthesizers. So the delay is going to delay the unison voices. Yeah, the duplicated voices. And it's a very short sound. So you are going to be... Can you hear it? It's like... Ta-da. So that's it. Now, if you're holding a key, you're not going to notice it. But when you play it for the first time, you're going to be getting it. Now, what you can do, you can just do a little bit, and I believe the idea of all of this is to detune, is to just move back the voices and alter the pace. Right. So, but it's a very simple control. You know, if you don't even have to use it if you don't want to. Now I'm gonna go turn this one off, and we need to talk about the glide. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this one because it's just a very simple thing. Now, the glide is going to slide or glide to your next note. So if I play a key, it's going to do that. If I play a higher key, it's going to glide. It's just like doing that. If I go all the way up, it's going to take a long time to glide. Right? Yeah, super long time to glide. So let me go to 70, something a little bit more normal. Now, the glide, even though you can do it on polyphonic, with a lot of voices, it always works a little bit better when you're working in mono. Right? It's a little bit more consistent. Now, then you have this legato, and this legato works with mono. It doesn't work on the other one. So if I go to 8 voices and enable legato, I'm going to be playing it. Notice that we are not getting that glide. I'm just playing keys randomly. We are not getting it. So this works on mono. Now, how this works when you enable the legato is that when you play a key, you're not going to get that glide. So I'm going to be playing a key, another one, another one, another one. I just don't get it, right? But if I'm holding a key and I play a new key, it's going to glide from that key I was holding to the next one. Now I'm going to and I'm playing two keys right now. I'm holding a lower C and an F, a higher F. If I release that F, it's going to go back to the key I was holding. So if I do the same, I play a higher C in this case, it's going to glide to that note. And if I release the higher C, it's going to glide to the note that you are holding. The takeaway of this is that you need to hold a key in order to glide. All right, so that's enough about glide. We need to talk about all of this that we have right here, which is highly important. We need to talk about the keyboard and all the values that we have right there. Now, some of these values are pretty simple and easy to understand. Some of them are not. You have the voices. We already talked about this. You can do 8 voices or mono. Then you have your detune. This one is pretty simple. If I play a key, this is a global detune. I'm going to be moving up or down. And notice I'm going to show you the tuner. Let me do a C. So this is going to make it sharp, or it's going to make it flat to the other way, pretty much. So you're just detuning just a tiny bit. But it's a very tiny detune. Or you can go in semitones. Right? And then you can go in octaves. And it's doing it for all the oscillator, all the voices. So if I go to oscillator number 2, it's going to do it for this one as well. So it's a global control for all this, the whole synthesizer. So then you have the PB range. This one sounds weird, but it's very simple. So you have your pitch bend. That's what PB means, pitch bend. So if I play a key and I go up on the pitch, I'm gonna be getting that, and I'm gonna go down on the pitch bend. And I'm using a MIDI or an Arturia key lab. If I go down on the pitch bend all the way down, it's going that way. Now the thing is that right here you're saying I want to go 2 semitones up or 2 semitones down when I use the pitch bend. But you can go crazy right here and say I want to go a full octave. So now if I play a key and I go up on the pitch bend, it's gonna go 12 semitones up or 12 down, an octave, full octave. Now I'm gonna go back to mono because it's gonna be easier to hear mono, and actually this priority works better in mono. So when you play keys, sometimes it's gonna let you play the higher keys if you're holding a key, or it's not gonna let you play a key if you're not holding the key that you need to play. I know it sounds weird. I just messed it up. Let me just go right there. So by default, the priority is last. So I'm gonna be playing a key, and I'm gonna be playing a low key, a C key, right? The C3. And for now, I'm just gonna disable the oscillator number 2. I'm gonna be playing that key. If I play a higher key, it's gonna let me. Right? And I'm still holding the C3. So I'm playing a C3, I'm gonna play a C4. So it's just letting me. Now if I play a lower key, I'm playing the C3. If I go down to a lower key, it's gonna let me. Now, this is what the last note priority is gonna work. It's gonna let you play, and it's gonna take the last note that you play. It doesn't care if it's a higher note or if it's a lower note, if you're holding a middle note, right? So then you have the other options. It's going to say high. So this means that if you're playing a C, you can only play higher keys. So I'm going to go high in pitch. I'm going to play it right now. And I'm going to go back to my C3. Now, if I want to play a lower key, hopefully you can hear this. I'm just tapping or playing the lower notes, and it's not letting me. That's why it's high priority. It will only play the higher keys if you're holding, I don't know, C3 and up. Then if you go to C2, it's going to be C2 and up. It's not going to let you play lower keys. But the other one is just going to do the opposite. If I play a key and I play higher keys, it's just not going to let me. I can only play lower keys. Right? Now, usually the best mode, it's the last, because you can do whatever you want. Now then we get to the error and we get to the stretch. And these ones are the weird ones. So the error, what it's going to be, it's actually super simple, is a deviation in pitch. A deviation in pitch. So I'm going to play something like that, and I'm going to go up on the error. And notice that it's moving. I'm going to show you the tuner. Let me just go back. I'm playing a C, right? And right there we have a C. I'm gonna go and say that I want 50% error, just to say something. And I'm gonna play that C again. I'm gonna play it again. And now notice that we get something different. So it's like randomizing whatever pitch. Sometimes it's gonna be, really up or really down. It's always, moving around this. It's not gonna go crazy. Now, this is important sometimes when, on analog synthesizers, because not everything is going to be really in tune, super highly, in tune. So if I play a chord, I'm in mono. So let me just go to 8 voices. If I play a chord, can you hear that not everything is in tune? If I play again, it's even worse. So this error is going to do that. It's going to give you that error in the tuning. So if 100% it's too much, you can go to something and you're emulating that analog vibe. Notice that we just don't hear the difference that much. We can hear it, but not that much. And this is, part of the analog vibe. Now, the stretch is a little bit similar, not, I won't say equal to the key on the pitch mod. So this, what it will do, it will mess with your scale, with your keyboard. So if I play a C right now, we are going to be getting a C. Now this one is going to be stretching your keyboard, so it's going to mess with your tuning. So right now it's called equally tempered. We already talked about this. If I play a C, notice that it's already a little bit weird. It's deviating a little bit. And we are not doing there, right? Now, I'm going to keep playing a C, a D, an E. And notice it's adjusting and it's trying to now be in tune. But as I keep going up, it's going to keep detuning a little bit more. So this is what this control is going to do. I'm going to go crazy so we can really hear this. I'm going to be playing a C3. Notice it's all the way, it's a little bit off. If I keep going up, or in this case, I'm going to go up. I'm going to go down. So as I go down, it's going to detune even more, and even more. We are still, on the right key. We're still playing an F, but it's a little bit off from the right tuning. And if I keep going down in pitch, it's gonna detune even more. Sometimes with some synthesizers, analog synthesizers, especially if you have a lot of oscillators, you're going to be tuning them the best you can. Maybe if you open them up and you have the tools, but not always they're going to be right in the money, right in the pocket, right in the spot. So when you are tuning something, maybe you're tuning, let's say C3 on an analog synth, and you're right there. Sometimes if you if you didn't adjust it that well, you're going to be playing a higher C. And it's going to be a little bit off from the center. Still going to be a C, but it's going to be a little bit off. So this is something very common with analog synthesizers. You have maybe the C3 is going to be right in tune, but maybe C4 is going to be a little bit off. Or maybe C0 is going to be a little bit off. So it's something very common. So this is emulating that. Okay, so let's talk about the last thing. Is going to be the quick routing and the routing possibilities. So this is just a fast way to adjust the routings. So if I go to the first one, it says right here you can see the chart. It says the oscillator is going to the filters and then goes to the amp. So this one is going to this one and this going to this one and goes out. This one to this one to this one and goes out, and all the sound just merges right there, and we just get the sound. That's how it works. So this is what the quick routing is going to do. So the next one is going to be both oscillators are going to go to filter number 1 and then going out on the amp. The other one is a little bit different. It's, you notice right there, the chart, the oscillators are just like blending or just mixing at some point. And it's because if you take a look at right here, the oscillator number 1, it's sending 50-50. So it's sending to this and it's sending to this. And this one is doing the same thing, is sending to the filter 1 and then the filter 2, and then everything goes out to the amp 1 and the amp 2, and then we get the sound. So we could do all of this manually. For example, if I don't want to do this, but I still want to keep this routing, I can go right there and say, you know what? On this one, I want to go to filter 2, to filter 1, let's say. Let's just pretend. But on the oscillator number 2, I'm going to keep the 50-50. So you still, can create all of this manually. You don't have to use the quick routing. Now, the last one is going to be a little bit different. It says it's going to grab the oscillators. They are going to filter number 1. Notice we can see right there, filter 1, filter 1. Then the filter 1, it's grabbing whatever signal is doing this job and then sending it to filter number 2. So now both are going here. This one is going right there. We can see it right there on the chart. And then this one is going out through the amp number 2 and then goes out. So again, all of this, we just can change it manually. Maybe I don't want this, but I want to keep this. I'm going to go down on this one and I'm going to enable the amp, and now this one is going out on this one. Now there's one thing that we didn't cover, and maybe I'm going to go to the analog number. No, you know what? I'm going to go to this one, the quick routing number 1. I'm going to go to this one. So there's something right here at the bottom that says follow. And it's a little bit weird to explain, to be honest. Okay, so I'm going to go to the filter number 1 on the oscillator 1. And I'm going to go to oscillator number 2, and it goes to filter number 2, right? So everything is going out to its own amp envelope, amp section or VCA. So, okay, so right now, what I'm going to do, I'm going to enable the follow. But what I want to do, I want to send from the filter number 1 to the filter number 2. So both oscillators, the one is going to filter number 1. This one is still going to number 2, but this one, it's rerouting the signal to filter number 2. So I'm going to be turning off the amp number 1. So what we can do, if I play, we can hear the number 1 and the 2 going through the filter 2 and then the amp number 1, but the oscillator number 1 is going to this, right? So we're going to go up and up the octave, and we can hear that the rerouting to filter number 2 is doing its job. It's rerouting the signal. And if I chop frequencies, it is chopping this. Now, the thing is that the follow, and I'm going to go to filter number 2 now, and we can easily hear this. We are going to filter number 2, but we are following, and I'm going to move this cut of frequencies. What is happening? Why is chopping frequencies? Remember, the oscillator number 2 is going to filter number 2. The oscillator number 1 is going to filter number 2, and the oscillator number 2 is going to the 2. So why is the cutoff frequencies of the number 1 affecting the sound? Because nothing is being routed to this. And it's because of the follow. Now this follow makes the cutoff frequencies work as an offset. So if I go all the way up on this one and all the way down on this one acts like a main cut of frequencies. It doesn't matter, we are not receiving signal from anywhere right here. It's going to react as a main cut of frequencies. But when we use this one, and I'm going to maybe put it right here, this one is going to work as an offset. So we can use this part. So if I move this one, it's going to be chopping frequencies, but it's not going to chop all the frequencies. So if I keep going up on this one, we are going to be getting more. So it works like an offset. It's a little bit weird. It's not very common on all synthesizers, but this is what it does. The follow is just going to use it as an offset. Now, if I disable the follow and I move this one, it does nothing. The main control or the main cut of frequencies is going to be this, right? So again, it's just a little bit weird, but that's the way it works. All right, so we covered, I guess, pretty much everything. It was long. Some of the options are confusing, but not anymore. So now you know how to use the whole synthesizer. All right, so I'm a little bit tired because this was a little bit long, But well, so if you liked all this and maybe you learned something, remember to like and subscribe. And if you have the money and you want to buy me a coffee, you can. You go to the links at the description. You have PayPal, you have Patreon. If you want to be a 1-month patron, you can. And you have the YouTube thanks. Okay, so see you on the next one.